There we go. Okay. Good morning, good morning. Welcome everybody to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, broadcasting to you live from Indianapolis, Indiana. And for those of you who are watching on this wonderful weekend, if you're out at the track watching the race, good for you. Or I don't know if it's the race today, but I've been hearing all of the race cars from across the town. You know, we're like, I don't know, 20 miles away or something. We keep hearing all the race cars at the track, so that's kind of interesting. I guess it just depends on how the wind's blowing, right? But anyway, today we're going to be talking about how to make your life easier, and we are discussing chapter 22 of how Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao by Wayne Dyer. And we're on chapter 22 discussing verse 22 of the Tao Te Ching. And so, but before we get this conversation going, I'm going to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves as well. And for those of you who are watching, if you'd like to jump over to our blog, you can find us live at SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. Again, that is SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. And just scroll down to the bottom, you can leave us a comment and jump in on this conversation, because I think it's going to be real interesting talking about what the Tao has to say and Wayne Dyer's interpretation, as well as our own experiences on how we make life easier and what we think this verse means. So, okay, guys, so jump out, introduce yourselves, and I'll mute out for a minute.
Good morning. This is Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado. Happy to be here.
Dan Sissick in Las Vegas, Nevada, and again, I'm also happy to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Good morning, Dan, Samantha, Catherine. This is Christopher Camp from the Chicago area. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks guys. So, okay, so this week's verse, verse 22 of the Tao Te Ching, who would like to read this to get our conversation going? Okay, jump out, Dan.
I will. Okay. The flexible are perceived unbroken. The bent become straight. The empty are filled. The exhausted become renewed. The poor are enriched. The rich are confounded. Therefore the sage embraces the one. Because he doesn't display himself, people can see his light. Because he has nothing to prove, people can trust his words. Because he doesn't know who he is, people recognize themselves in him. Because he has no goal in mind, everything he does succeeds. The old saying that the flexible are preserved unbroken is surely right. If you have truly attained wholeness, everything will flock to you.
Thanks, Dan. So what did you guys think when you first read this verse? What was the first thing that popped into your mind about it? Anybody want to jump out and share? There's Jason. Awesome. Morning, Jason.
Hi, Jason.
I was thinking this guy's pretty humble. That's a high standard to live up to. Those are good qualities.
Yeah, I was thinking that we are always the cause of our own suffering, basically.
I think for me...
Oh, go ahead there. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, okay. I was going to let Jason kind of jump out and introduce himself, so I'll let him do that first.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Much appreciated. How are you guys doing today? I haven't been able to get back on here in a couple weeks, and I missed you. It's really good to be here. I'm Jason Roberts. I'm down here in St. Pete, Florida, and we're looking to... Right, we're going to read some more of this, How to Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer. Samantha, how are you? Thanks for the invite. So what this, you got the verse, Dan? Have you guys said that already? I'm a little
Yeah,
late.
we've already read it, and you just got in right after I read it.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm interested to hear where we're at. What's going on, Catherine? How are you this morning? So,
Okay, I'll jump out and throw my thoughts back in here now for what I was going to say. Um, I think the part that got me was kind of here in the middle where it says therefore the sage embraces the one because he doesn't display himself. People can see his light. And I think that kind of to me, it seems like we're all drawn to the people who are the ones who are so unaware of their presence and what they're about and what they truly have, that they don't really see it, but yet it's there and everybody can see it, and they're at a loss as to why everybody like either flocks to them or likes them or listens to everything they say or something like that. It's because I think it's kind of there's a realness and a genuineness and a trueness there that a lot of times in this world we don't see very often anymore. And so I think that's kind of what I got a little bit out of this, is that to find something where it's just kind of real, true, pure, and genuine is what we're all looking for. And this kind of helps, you know, to me, that's what it says to me. I don't know what it says to anybody else, but that's what I got out of that.
Thanks, Dan. Hey, Jason, you know what I was asking everybody right before you came on was to just share their initial thoughts of this verse after reading it. So if you want to jump out, feel free to. Can you? Is my sound okay? Okay.
yeah, you sound great, Samantha. Thanks. Yeah, well, initially when I read this, it was more of, them him talking about just being flexible in life, right? Is kind of was I was, where it steered me. But then it talked more about, the sage and how we can become, or it seems to be like that's kind of a center point. They want us to, the sage apparently is something we should strive to be like, right? That's what I'm getting out of it. And like what Dan was saying, kind of tapping into this mystery of how do we attract, how do, as individuals, how do we attract the people that do come into our lives? What is it that they're attracted to, I guess, and when we're coming from the heart, we're attracting the right people for our own selves, kind of, I guess. I don't know. It's pretty. it's a pretty deep and I don't know, kind of complicated verse. I think he touches on quite a few things. So, but I totally I can understand the flexibility part, and just being able to kind of flow with life, and so I do get that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, when I read it, it just kind of struck me as we cause our own suffering through our inflexibility, usually. There's so many times in my life where I can think back on things and see where maybe I got to a point where I was just standing my ground, and whatever it was. And that almost never really works well. Like you have to be flexible, because the universe will help you work things out as long as you remain open to the possibilities. But once you get that fixed place in your mind where you're just not going to budge, or you just can't do something, or whatever lie you're telling yourself in the moment. It's like all those, it's like you have all these angels or something up there looking for answers to your challenge, you know, and the minute you get in that fixed place, it's just like, you're like, no, you know. It's like the possibilities go away. And this, I mean, I prove this to myself almost daily. Something will come up in the day where I just can't figure it out or something, and I really just have to say, okay, y'all, you guys take care of it, and I'm open to whatever, and then the next thing you know, it just kind of works out. So it's, if you think about trees, that, you know, trees are, the trees that don't break are really flexible, but there are some trees that it seems like they, first big wind that comes through, you know, they're just blown over because they're too stiff, they don't go with the wind, and they just crack and break. But being able to really maneuver around life, life happens to everybody, you know, but the way that we react to life is completely our choice. And I guess if you think about, when I think about rigidity and beliefs and stuff, I think about, what was that movie with the three grumpy men or something? I can't remember the name of it. It was a funny movie, but when I think about the elders that I've known in my life, you know, when they're getting up in their years and they just seem to get more and more pigeonholed into their beliefs and steadfast and inflexible, I guess. It makes it challenging to work with elders sometimes. Babies can be that way, but they're easier to handle. But the adults, when I used to do some nursing home work and stuff, it was always an amazing adventure to try to get some things accomplished with some patients because of these not being flexible, you know. But flexibility is probably, other than common sense, I think it's probably one of the best qualities that anybody could ever have. I learned it a lot growing up, and I learned it a lot as a nurse, and certainly in this entrepreneur land that most of us find ourselves in, we really have to be flexible with ourselves and with others, and yet be able to keep ourselves in line at the same time. So it can be a challenge, especially if people are big planners, and whichever, you know, we tell people to plan it all out, all the details and all that, but you've probably heard me say, the minute you put your plan into action, it all changes, so don't spend too much time on it. But you know, sometimes we get it in our minds, okay, this is my business plan, this is exactly what I want to do, this is how I want to see it. I know, Samantha, your husband, look at that baby, oh my goodness. Samantha's husband is starting a new business, and he has very set thoughts about how he wants to see things come about, and sometimes it doesn't happen like that. You know, sometimes we have to be really flexible about where some of these things come from. And when things aren't going the right way, you know, instead of just breaking and crumbling and quitting and saying, oh, it just doesn't work, I can't, you really have to be open to the possibilities of how you can make it work, and find someone to mastermind with, because when your mind is completely shut down and there's no possibilities, if you talk to somebody else whose mind isn't, then you'll benefit, you know, those ideas coming through to you. So, grumpier old men, that's it. Thanks. Look at that baby. Oh my goodness. I just want to kiss him.
I was going to jump out on your point there a little bit, Catherine, because as I'm reading a little bit now in the chapter, now that I've got a little time to look, and the palm tree flexibility thing, like you were talking about trees and trees that just snap and stuff with the first confrontation or something. I'm going to go and take it to a kind of different level and a more of a personal level. I think that we've all been on, like with our own families. You know, we've had to learn to be very flexible and compromise and make big adjustments because of the whirlwind and storms that could come in within our own families, and to kind of rather push the family to a point where, you know, the whole family just kind of implodes or whatever. We all have learned, you know, through our course of our lives, you know, what we need to bend with, what we don't bend with, you know, things like that. And I think that's kind of what we do even in our everyday life. You know, there's certain things that we learn that we'll compromise on or bend with or, you know, allow, and other things we don't. But I think, you know, the essence here is, like you say, when you were saying, you know, when you make plans, the big thing I've heard of growing up was the best laid plans of mice and men. You know, you know, the minute you do it, something always happens that just throws that big old monkey wrench in there, and you're like, where'd that come from? You know, didn't plan for that, or, you know, how'd that, you know, and you have to find a new way. And I know for me, I tend to be very set in how I like things done and want to follow. It's like, don't, you know, I can deal with interruptions or changes, but as long as they're small minimum, but don't keep me, you know, take me from here instead of way over there. You know, I don't like that one bit, you know, at all. So I think, you know, more as I'm looking into this, you know, but as we see out there in life, the ones that seem to, I think, generate the best end results are the ones who are the most willing to be flexible and compromise on the little things and the things that don't really matter to achieve the result of the actual goal that they're working towards.
Cool, guys. We had a little bit of crying a little bit ago, and I wanted to make sure I was kind of muted out for a bit, but that was my little baby Connor, my little grandbaby. So I thought I'd show him on camera for a minute while he was kind of calm. But sorry, I've been missing out on the conversation a little bit. I'm just going to let you guys roll with it today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, he's cute. Sorry about that. Let's see. Here I am. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that screen share there for a second. I had to go off and figure out how to come back on. I think I pushed screen share by accident. Anyway, I apologize.
You're good. So what did you think, Donna? Are you going to join our conversation today? What did you think about this chapter?
Yeah, great verse and chapter. I read it this week there and can you hear me okay? Apologize for popping on late. I had some company popped in here at the last minute, but it was all good. A good example about being flexible, huh? you just never know. There was you know, it's like I've learned that reading this is like coming up to the modern day time that we live in. It's just kind to, you know, like accept the storms in our life and be happy. And it's not always easy to be happy. It's not always easy to smile. And I kind of rewind back to that. Let me say this real quick, and I'll be quick with it because I don't want to elaborate on it too much. But I don't know if you all in the verse it reads, change the way you see the storms of your life. A lot of times, you know, I apologize for not being on the camera, but I have to be off for obvious reasons. But you know, it's funny to me that people can see the glories and the shinings and all that good stuff, and that's well and fine. But you know, they never see that what's happening behind the stage, so to speak. And a good example is, I'm going back to Chabaga Mom when I read this little verse. I'm going to come back. I may not even pronounce. See, who knows? I can't even pronounce her name. Someone will help me out with her name. The mom that was laughing last week. The mom that was laughing. What was she? What was that? Chabaga?
Chewbacca, yeah,
Okay,
Chewbacca.
all right, there you go. It's going to make sense when I get it out. Just think about it now. Okay, and I'm so happy for that, Mom. I'm bringing this out for a good point here, a good illustration. Change the way you see the storms of your life. Work at removing the ego as a dominant influence now over you. Okay. Release the need for the attention of others, and witness how people become drawn to you naturally. Now I'm reading this because now guys, I can read. I'm a pretty good reader, but I'm just not good reading. I gotta get better at this, but I can read. I just have a little. That's one of my little hiccups. Okay, let go of having to win an argument and being right by changing the atmosphere with a statement such as, "You are very likely correct." Okay, maybe I can get this out because I'm a dog. But listen, the Chewbacca mom there, I don't know if you guys, that lady, I mean, hey, who knew her before she came out? Who knew her? Really, who knew her? And this is a good illustration. You never knew the storms that she faced. We didn't know her. I didn't, if anybody knew her, except for her family. But all of a sudden, she's an overnight success. And if you notice what she done, she said, "Don't put all of this on me." Notice how she done that, all that glory and all that praise. I just so love that. She said, "Look at the people behind me." And then she pointed out to the camera, "You guys out there." She took all of that praise off of herself. And I just, for a minute there, I just thought about our good master. You know how they came in and hollered Hosanna on him and then crucified him the next day. But what she was saying is, I did this for you all. Just being myself. And I'm sure the lady probably, her intentions was probably just to be a regular mom. And she says it probably never happened again. It's like this one time. And she was like telling the world, take notice of this and use it for your benefit. I'm helping you guys too, okay? That's exactly what she said. I was just overflow, with joy with that because she was flexible. That's what I'm trying to say. She portrayed a good illustration of being flexible because all of a sudden her world had to become flexible for all of that public attention. And I love it. Thank you for letting me share it. I'll go off for now. Thank you.
Success. All right. Thanks, Donna. That is a great story about that woman, and I'm glad you brought that up. And you really told that well. Thanks a lot. I've been working so hard and away from the computer so much these past couple of weeks. I barely even heard about her, but when I did see that video and heard her laughing the way she was, you can't help but, take that energy in and it spills over, and so that's awesome. I hadn't heard that she, spoke about that and like you said, shared the experience with everyone and kind of kept things in perspective, and that's great. I see what you're saying. She was flexible about receiving the attention and also being in the moment, but being aware that, hey, this doesn't really change anything. She's just still the same person, but she's coming through her own true nature. And wow, if she pointed that out to everyone on camera, that's cool. I hadn't seen that, so thanks for bringing that up. That's awesome. Good point. I had written down some notes about the verse, and if I could, I'd just go on a moment about it. It seems to me in the first part of this verse is of the 22nd verse, the flexibility. It talks about flexibility. The flexible are preserved unbroken. The bent becomes straight. The empty are filled. I was trying to make a connection between all of these. The exhausted become renewed. The poor are enriched. The rich are confounded. And to me, what connects all those, or those are sort of the natural way of things, of these sort of, I guess, personalities, or these types of people, or these situations. It's sort of the natural, I think, direction of something that's empty to be filled, right? So if you empty yourself, then you can receive, you know, and you know, it's sort of our natural inclination that if we feel like we have something, we're going to start losing some of it, you know. But if we're super poor, well, hey, there's only one way to go up, kind of, you know. So this is all this, to me, this kind of meant this is the natural way of things. And it says, therefore, the sage embraces the one, you know, maybe the single, the self, his own natural being, his own source, I guess, right? So that he can be more of everything to everyone. So, you know, without having to define himself. Because they say, because he doesn't display himself, people can see his light. And because he has nothing to prove, you know, there's no agenda, there's no expectations, you know, and people can see his light because he's putting out no filters. He's not trying to filter it for one type of person or another to get his message across. He's just kind of like coming from the source. And then down below that, you know, so that people he has, because he has nothing to prove, no agenda, no expectations, you know, people can trust in his words. And because he doesn't know who he is, people can recognize themselves in him. To me, that seems, talks about being relatable, you know, and being a sounding board, or being maybe helping others see the reflection of their goodness. You know, it brings back the thought of how when we react, I've been hearing this a lot lately about how when we react to others about something they've done or said to us that we don't feel good about, that's really a reflection of ourselves. So, you know, in being to others a certain way, then can we reflect the best of them from us, from ourselves? I don't know if that quite makes too much sense there, but you know, it goes on to say, because he has no goal in mind, everything he does succeeds. And I mean, how awesome is that? I mean, if we can let go of our ego and what we want and be flexible, and just, you know, kind of understand that this is a process and a journey that can take many turns and twists, but can come around ultimately to the things we want in life. You know, so I'm really, you know, just by dissecting a little bit, that's kind of what I get out of it. So what do you guys think? Any thoughts? How about you, Chris? How are you doing today?
I'm doing real good. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for asking.
Great to see you.
Yeah. Thanks. Same here. Yeah. Well, like it's kind of hard to deal with the fact that everything's changed, right? That's what people say. Oh, the only constant is change. Well, how does that help me? You know, you like some consistency or something like this, you know, if they say everything's changing. So then, since everything's changed, you got to be flexible, you know. And I don't know, definitely the willow tree's coming to mind, but I'm more like a stiff tree, so. But yeah, it's like as everything comes up, you do have to sort of be flexible. And then something Tony Robbins said came up in my head, and that was it's not about what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you, related to what you were saying. You know, when something comes up, or a response comes up in you towards something, that happens all the time. You know, people will, if you can be in semi-negative environment or whatever, and like one of the keys is not responding, or just being able to be aware enough that that's just what's coming out, and then either not respond or respond to something totally different, positive, because yeah, it is a reflection of ourselves.
Right. Yeah. And that's interesting what you said about change. And I can relate that to something I heard recently, is that the idea about if change is the only constant and everything is always changing, that in order, if you're the type of person that is rigid and tries to stay the same, then in doing that you're having to actually change to stay the same. And so that was really profound to me. That hey, that kind of makes sense. That if everything is changing, then we're actually having to change ourselves in order to try to stay the same. And of course, it's really a futile effort, because we're not going to stay exactly the same. We have to change. We can try to change as little as possible, but even by doing that, we're changing ourselves. So I don't know. I kind of prefer to go with the flow, but actually at the same time, I understand you have to be aware of certain things. So I mean, like what Dan was saying, when you go to, sometimes it seems like when you go to start a project, that something inevitably will, be an obstacle that you have to face. Well, I've thought about that many times before, and that's sort of the nature of doing things. When you want to get through or make a path through the forest, you're gonna come across some bushes you have to clear, some rocks you have to move, So we can look at it as, I hate to start this because as soon as I do it, it's open up a can of worms. But you can also think, well, hey, I'm going to do this, and I can expect these things, so let me be prepared. And and when I see them, I'm going to recognize them quicker and faster and be prepared for them, so I'll deal with them so much easier. So it really does depend, I think, on how we look at things. So that's why I love coming out here and being on here, because we look at different ways of seeing things, and so we can change our mindset and maybe make a difference in our own lives and other people's lives. But yeah, I thought that was interesting what you were saying there, Dan, too, earlier about the being flexible. What was that you're saying about how people attract earlier on? Do you remember what I was talking about? What I'm mentioning, Dan?
Oh, well, I was going to go to a couple points that you were saying. In one, going back to filling, the like a cup emptying out and looking to be filled up again. I've always heard that, and I've always, I've understood the analogy, but somehow today it kind of got flipped on its head, and I tend to be, because you were talking about, letting, like when you pour, the only where you have to go is up. And yeah, I've been kind of poor. I've been, in that realm before, and I've come up, and and I'm fine and doing, but now I'm at that point where it's like I don't want to lose anything, and so it's like, but yet in doing that, I'm not opening to be receiving the other things that I could be receiving. So in that sense, it kind of just clarified itself to me today, I think, and I realized some things that, excuse me, because I've already started on a little bit of that process, even though I've been involved in doing what I'm doing for the last 4 or 5 years. But I continually learn and have things reiterated. So in that, because I recently made some mindset changes on some things, and quit being involved with something I was being involved with, and that has freed up a lot of stress in me and taken a lot of that. So in that sense, I felt that change, that shift, and let go of that negative energy. So that's part, I think, of what, when we're talking about, being rigid and stuff and not bending, or when you were making the point of, that in order to stay the same, we have to change to adjust to everything around us changing, so that we still seem the same, or that everything in our mind is acting or flowing or going the same. But we've really made unconscious adjustments to keep that state. And so when you said that we're changing to change to stay the same, that kind of kind of clicked a flip and switch of me, and it's like I do that all the time, all the time. No ifs, ands, or buts, and I'm like, oh, wow, I am changing. I just didn't realize what I was doing, and that's a nice little eye opener. But it's leading me into that, you know, going back to being that flexible, and learning that when you were talking another part where all of a sudden you were talking about being in the forest and having to clear out branches and stuff out of the way. It makes me think of somebody, you're in the jungles or something, and you see the well-worn path, and you kind of know where that leads. It's been cleared. You kind of know what's down that road, and so you'll kind of see the same thing that everybody else has done. So there's nothing really new or adventurous or different, maybe to you, maybe because but it's not gonna have that expectations or that you know awe that it can have. Whereas if you're kind of changing and going about and doing something different, or going down different path, where yeah, you might have to clear the trail, you know, but you get through it and you realize you come to something much more greater, bigger, um, better than had you gone on that other. And so that kind of was another analogy I made out of that. So with that, I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of, is they're afraid of that discovery and getting into that realm, and you know taking those chances and those leaps, and bending and being flexible and willing to adjust in order to get that, going back to, like he says in the book, let me flip back to that page because I can't remember exactly the way it said it, but um, the old saying that the flexible are preserved unbroken is surely right. If you have truly attained wholeness, everything will flock to you. And I think that's kind of where you get when you go through all that, and you really are more willing to be flexible and change and go with the flow and go off that beaten path, so to speak.
I want to step out and say thank you so much to Karen and Heron and everyone that's joined us. And I got a great visual when you were talking, Dan, of um, a girl on a high dive board. You know what I'm talking about, those boards that are way up high. So just picture like the diver walking up to the end and just standing perfectly straight and just like stepping off, and how spectacular that is compared to when they go in and they bend down and they jump and flip and twist and all that stuff. They have to be flexible, right, to make it work. One of the people I talk about quite often is Byron Katie, and if you don't know her story, I would definitely go to Byron Katie or thework.com, and you can read about her and learn her techniques. But one of the things that she talks about is how for years she had a family and children and everything, and like for years there was this constant fight in their house because the kids wouldn't pick up their socks. I think it was the kids and her husband or something. Like nobody would pick up their socks. They took their socks off and threw them down, and like it just irritated the shit out of her. Like for years this thing went on, and finally one day she went into her children's room and she's looking around at all the socks on the floor. And I can't imagine there wasn't more than socks, but this is the way she tells the story. And like she's looking at them and she's just overwhelmed with, oh my God, years of, they can't pick up their socks. And it really drove her crazy. And she finally looked at the socks and realized that she could pick them up, that she was asking them to do what she was not even willing to do herself. So she picked up the socks, and it was like, voila, the floor looks great, you know, the socks aren't there, oh my God. And she realized that just by becoming more flexible around that and not insisting that they pick up the socks, what really made her happy was that the socks were picked up, is what she found out in the end. It wasn't that they had to pick up the socks, it just was that the socks needed to be picked up so that she could see the floor or whatever, you know. But she says, I can't believe I tortured myself all those years by being so rigid. So it's such a good story, you know, especially for, again, I'll bring it back to entrepreneurs. We get rigid in the way we think it's supposed to happen, the time frame it's supposed to happen, you know, that our success is supposed to come, especially if we start down the very dark road of comparing ourselves to other people that are up on stage or whatever, because you can't compare yourself to those people. You have no idea what they've done to get to where they are, or all the struggles that they've gone through, or how flexible they've had to be to get to where they are. You know, you just kind of see the finished product and think, oh yeah, I want to be that. One of the things that I've learned recently, because I've never had a business that worked before, so I finally have one that works, and it gets really busy, and you have to get like super flexible, because especially if you're working with people in other countries, because the time differences, and you're up in 3 in the morning to talk to somebody, and it's you know, you log on to Facebook and you got like 26 messages or 90 notifications or whatever, you know, and you can get knocked back by it a little bit. You know, you can start saying, oh gosh, I can't handle all this, you know, it's too much, I don't have time. You can start using these excuses and getting really rigid, and you can make yourself really miserable. Samantha pointed out a really good thing in the blog this week, and how her dog was begging, she was eating and her dog was begging, and you know, she just was yelling at the dog or whatever, and she realized she was getting upset, but she had other options, you know, like she could put the dog in the other room or put the dog outside or whatever. So I think that's how we have to be in our daily lives, and in our of course, my experience with pain for the last 10 years has taught me to be extremely flexible. Like you have to learn how to do things in ways that you can do it. You know, you have to figure out a way to still live your life without letting this completely take over and control everything you do. You really have to learn how to get flexible. And it's the same way in business. You have to learn how to, this is a bad, I don't know whoever came up with this term, but you know, there's a million ways to skin a cat. But you know, you have to find what works for you when it comes to social media marketing or whatever. You know, just because the guy up on the stage is on 50 platforms and uses an auto poster, you know, 18 times a minute or something, it doesn't mean that that's what's going to work for you. You have to stay yourself. Because if you can just be yourself and be you and be consistent, and people can see that that is really you and not just some facade that you're putting on, that's when the people start to flock. The right people start to flock, because you can push things, you can insist that you get 25 new recruits a day, but what kind of a relationship are you going to have with them? You know, do you really want to sign up anybody that will click on your link? I don't. There's people I just don't enjoy working with. I'm sorry, y'all. That's the way it is. I kind of like to pick and choose who I'm doing business with, you know. So just be yourself, you know, be open, be flexible. Like you said, Dan, and I've said, everybody said, the minute you put your plan, doesn't matter, you can work 20 years on your plan, and the minute you start on it, something's going to change. So you might as well just jump in, don't just get on the high board and step off all stiff, go ahead and do a beautiful jump and flip, and, sometimes you're going to belly flop, it happens, but that sting, you'll get over it in a little bit, and you just get right back up on that ladder and dive again.
That's good. That's good. She brought that out there about what you brought out there, just Kevin. I'm glad you said that. I don't know if anyone read this week Todd Falcone's blog. It just popped out at me. I was going through, which I'm not on Facebook. This is not the knockdown Facebook because I like Facebook. That's one of my favorite places to hang out at. But caught his blog and I read it, and it was very short. And of course, he had a video. Did anyone see that where he was saying, "What is your new?" He asked a question. Now I'm telling you, that was a real good question he asked there. He says, "What is your unique selling proposition?" And he said, out here in the networking and marketing world, a lot of entrepreneurs are sort of like flopping over that, and they're not being, so to speak, genuinely in what they're really. What is the question would be, like Catherine just said, you pick and you choose, and you're sorting and you're sifting, and that's an awesome place to be in. If someone was to ask you that question personally, well, Donna or Catherine, Dan, Samantha, why should I, what's your unique selling position? What makes you different? Why should I join you in this thing, so to speak, when I can go out here and go down to Sam's or Walmart or wherever, just an analogy thing, and I can go buy my stuff from there or what have you. But, that was a good question. I saw 3 words there. I saw, first, to answer that question for me would be, first and foremost, it doesn't matter to me, really. It really doesn't. I'm very unattached from what a person does in what I do. That's true. So, therefore, I'm unique in that. And my selling proposition would be me. I'm who I am. I'm unique. That's my selling proposition. I'm not Geico. I'm not Walmart. Okay? And the proposition is, I have no position. I'm here now. That's my unique selling proposition. I mean, that's just maybe pretty lame for some people, but that was a pretty doggone straight question. Think about that. You may want to go check out that blog. It really covers the marketing, the way we see it today online. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and networkers should ask themselves that question and do their best to maybe try to answer it. Thank you for letting me share there. I'm done.
I got quiet now. I finally have an opportunity where I can chat for a little bit, and I've been kind of listening in a little bit on what everybody's been saying, and I think that you've all shared some wonderful points on this particular chapter. It was definitely kind of a reminder for me. The part where he was talking about because he has no goal in mind, everything he does succeeds. When I first read that verse, that was the one part of that verse that popped out at me, and I was like, what does that mean exactly? How can you succeed if you don't have a goal in mind? And and I had this kind of thought. I thought about it for a little while, and I was like, trying to think of times when I was succeeding but not with any goal, and I realized that we do it every day when we, hang out with friends, or we just are happy with our family, or whatever. It's like, for instance, if you were to go out with a friend and you really didn't have a plan, but you end up having a good time, that would be success without a goal in mind, right? And if we can look at our lives and see all of the different opportunities or the different situations where we actually are being successful without trying. It's like, I get up in the morning and I get my coffee out and I go sit out on the front porch, and then I'm just out in nature, and that for me is being successful because I'm enjoying that moment in my life. And so I wanted to bring that up because I kind of feel like there are so many opportunities for us to be successful without having to push things so hard. And I think that's kind of what he's talking about here, is that whole, when we're inflexible in the way that things happen, then we cut ourselves off from the opportunities for successes that happen in a different way. But I don't know, that's most of what I wanted to talk about today. And I know we're kind of at the top of the hour. I wanted everybody to just kind of, share your final thoughts before we wrap up this verse and move on to the next one for next week. And I'm sorry I didn't have more time to participate this week, but my family decided to surprise me and show up, and so I'm so happy about that. But anyway, guys, so share your final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up for today. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Samantha. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate it. Today's been a great day as usual, and turns out I have to work 2 weeks in a row at 10 o'clock, so I'm going to leave 5 minutes early. And glad your family's visiting you, Samantha. And it's good to see you, Jason. All right, I enjoyed today. Thanks a lot. I'm going to go back through this verse because I'm not sure what it means. It's got a lot of good. It's very philosophical, Lao Tzu. It's also coming from this. It's got the male verbiage, but it's really old writings. So I know that some of the modern day Taoists are a little more sympathetic to that kind of just saying he and him all the time. All right. Thanks a lot, you guys, and have a great day.
Yeah, great, Chris. I appreciate you out here. I appreciate your thoughts, man. And it's, like you said, this is a pretty deep verse. It covers a lot of stuff. I thought it was one of the things I wanted to bring out in it that I thought was interesting was how when he says, the sage, doesn't display himself so people can see his light. And because he has nothing to prove, people can trust his words. And so I kind of putting this in context of trees and the forest and things like that, and how you can think of how we sometimes create rigidity in our lives where we don't even realize it. And that, an example of this might be of where we have, in one area of our life, we're acting as this one type of person. In another area of our life, we're acting like another type of person. And so as this one type of person in a certain area of our life, we may not be accepting of something. And then this other way of being, we're also not accepting of something else. And the more ways that we are different in different areas of our life, the more things that we have that we're unaccepting too. And that's one way where we don't realize it, but we can be creating rigidity in our life to where, normally if we were just as the sage wants to be, focused on the one and just allowing us to come from the source, rather, if we were able to do that, we'd be much more flexible without all these unaccepting thoughts based on these certain ways that we're being in different areas of our lives, if that makes sense. So, but it's just occurred to me that we can sometimes be causing rigidity in our lives by like pushing, and that causes us to push back. So we're more focused on pushing back than receiving and accepting and being really even open to the good joys and happiness of life sometimes. So I think this has helped me to be more aware of that. So thanks a lot for letting me come out, and it's great to see you all. Have a great weekend.
I'll jump out and throw my thoughts in. I like the little point you just brought out, Jason, because I think, yeah, for me, as I pointed out earlier, me and my rigidity and not liking change, but having understood that I'm changing just to keep that, I think that's the big thing I got out of this is that, you know, being more open to understanding that, flexibility tends to, I think, end up being the stronger way to go. I mean, if you look at a palm tree and stuff, how in, hurricanes and stuff, how they bend way over, and yet they're still standing when it's done and gone. And other things, buildings and stuff and everything have all been, you know, blasted, broken down, whatever. And I think, like I said, when we're like that, we're causing negative energy and we're putting a lot of negative out, and therefore that's what we get back too. And that's not what I personally want to strive for. I tend to think of myself as being very positive and very, you know, in that vein, because I tend to, always try to uplift people. But within myself, I'm seeing that there is a lot of negative. I may be putting some positive out, thinking that it's doing something, but yet as I'm receiving it, I'm very rigid and very negative in that sense. So I think that's something I'm realizing a little bit more. And so with that, that's my thoughts that I'm getting out of this today.
Guys, real quick, let me just clarify this before we go. If everyone would read the last part of that, do the towel now, that's one reason why that's the reason why I want to bring out that part about Todd Falcone today. It wasn't no marketing tactic or anything. Is that come up when I read that, do the towel now, the last part of this verse, and then I read Todd Falcone's blog. That and a lot of things came up, but it's like I listened to that. What he said, I listened to his video and I read his words. There's two things I done there. I listened to his video and I read his words. And now he gave an opposition in that to everybody. I mean, marketer, whoever, doesn't matter, about being flexible with who you really are. What is your unique selling proposition, whether you're in business or not? That's why I just wanted to close with that.
That's great. You guys have all had such good points. And you're right, Dan. Flexibility, there's more strength in flexibility. If you think about the great words of Bruce Lee, flow like water. Water can cut through stone, with consistency and flexibility and getting into all the cracks and crevices. And as we live our lives and we live this entrepreneurial journey, if we can just stay flexible, even in our life path, because it seems like, at least for me, it seems like I've lived a lot of different lives within this life, like I had my nursing career life and these other parts of my life that almost seem like a whole different one. There's a really good YouTube video, we've posted it on here before, about the hummingbird flying around to different things, and I think that's a great analogy here, is don't be so set in your mind that things have to go a certain way. God always has a better plan for us. My imagination is so small compared to the gifts and miracles that have been handed to me. So just be open to miracles. That's all I'll say.
Wonderful, guys. Everybody shared so many wonderful awesome comments today and so many great insights in this verse. You know, and it amazes me every week how every single chapter you can see it from so many different points of view, and you can experience different lessons that you can learn from them. And you know, I just wanted to bring up one other thing on the whole flexibility thing and you know, living in harmony with nature versus being and trying to control every aspect of it. I don't know if you guys ever watched that show, Impossible Engineering, but they create these amazing structures and equipment and yeah, I mean, just all kinds of different things, like big, huge islands in the middle of like the ocean. Or it's like, I think off the coast of Japan, they created an entire airport out in the water, and it was you know, it's just amazing some of the things that they've created. And then other things, like with different bridges, like long bridges that in rough waters that have like all kinds of currents and winds and all of these different things, and they want ships to be able to go under them, and they want, you know, trucks to be able to go across them, and all of these things. And if they were trying to control every kind of aspect of it from the get-go, it'd be more difficult than if they look at nature and they look at all the different aspects and then they try and work with them. Just like with everything, you know, I mean, we all hear about all the earthquakes and everything that happen out in California, and for so many years they would have, you know, all the structures kept breaking down and breaking down. And of course, you know, that still happens, but when they rebuild with the intention of expecting the earthquakes to happen and making the buildings so that they're more flexible, so that they can withstand these, you know, intense forces and still be standing afterwards. But I just wanted to kind of mention that, because we forget that it's that flexibility that helps us get through everything versus trying to just control every single aspect. So, but anyway, guys, everybody had some awesome thoughts and comments today, and thank you all for joining us this week. I think we saw Karen and Heron and Brother John. Welcome, guys. We're glad to have you on, or have you watching with us this week. And you can meet us here every single week at SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. And you can find our blog at mindsetmasterycollective.com. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube, share it, tweet us out. You can find us on Google Plus and Twitter and YouTube. That's where we're at. So anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks everybody again, and have an amazing, wonderful Memorial weekend. And we will see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.